We are being told that we must stop eating beef because the methane produced by cattle burps and farts is accelerating global warming. So let's look at the science. Mass balance calculations take into account material being added, exchanged, and lost during natural processes. And Australian geologist Ian Plimer breaks down this science in Eat Beef, Save the Planet. Grass, along with most plant life, consumes carbon dioxide from the air as food. The more CO2, the greener the environment. So the theory that CO2 levels are hurting the environment is flawed from the start. But for the sake of argument, we can examine the science and see if cow farts actually are increasing CO2 levels in the atmosphere. The grass consumes CO2 from the air, and when it dies, methane is released, which quickly separates into CO2 and water vapor. When the grass is eaten by cattle, this carbon is recycled in various ways. Cattle waste fertilizes the grass with some of this carbon, and the rest is stored in meat, milk, blood, intestines, bones, and skin. Thanks to the cattle, carbon is taken from the grass and used as fertilizer, stored in leather goods, and consumed as food, where most of it stays with the body until death. And so the processes of meat production and consumption actually removes carbon from the atmosphere and recycles it elsewhere. Humans, cattle, and grass are all parts of the same natural ecosystem, and carbon is the building block. The entire anti-meat agenda is built upon lies. Grass-fed beef is so nutritious that an all-beef diet has become a very popular choice for people cleansing and healing from several ailments and disease. Humans are omnivores, and that means we have the ability to survive on both plants and animals. Our teeth are able to cut and masticate animal flesh, and we have the digestive enzyme trypsin for breaking down meat, which has allowed the human brain to grow larger over time, allows us to grow stronger, and operate more efficiently. Many people eat vegetarian diets because they believe that eating meat is immoral. This argument is taught like a religion, with the main rule being don't eat anything with a face, which doesn't make any sense. What about the millions of microorganisms we consume in a single glass of water? Do they not deserve the same respect? Experiments with plants and vegetables show how they feel pain and recognize the person who hurt them. Do they not deserve the same respect simply because they have no face? A simple law of the physical natural world is that life is sustained by life. Every living thing sustains its own life by consuming other living things. This is true of the carnivore, the omnivore, and the vegan. The moral argument of veganism is just another ego trip. Many are learning veganism from modern yoga teachers, as if it were an ancient religion. But this is a myth. The cow was sacred in traditional yoga because it sustained life. Vegetarianism was only promoted among the lower castes so that enough meat was available to the warrior and priest classes. And that's all that's happening today. The all-powerful 0.1% want us lower castes to eat bugs while they save the best for themselves. But it's even worse than that. They want us all to get sick and die. In an evaluation of edible insects and the transmission of parasitic diseases, 1/3 of all insects studied were found to be pathogenic to humans. And most insects contain chitin, which is a modified polysaccharide present in most insects and absent in all mammals. We cannot digest it, and it is known to cause several health issues with humans who consume it, including respiratory issues and the accelerated growth of cancer cells. The real problem isn't beef consumption, it's factory farming, and we can solve this by incentivizing local grass-fed cattle farming.
At a 2019 food conference, where topics included whether humans were too selfish to live sustainably, an economist suggested cannibalism could be a viable solution for climate change, and that we could start off by eating our pets. School of Economics professor Magnus Soderlund says that eating human meat from the dead might help save the human race, and that we could overcome the taboos against eating each other by simply trying it out. And today, a new company is boasting their lab-grown artisanal salami derived from human flesh. And several articles normalizing cannibalism have recently been published by the mainstream media. The Wikipedia page leads with the benefits of cannibalism, where it says, in environments where food availability is constrained, individuals can receive extra nutrition and energy if they use other con-specific individuals as an additional food source. This would in turn increase the survival rate of the cannibal and thus provide an evolutionary advantage in environments where food is scarce. This may be true when there are no other food options, but when there are, it is never favorable for any species. Cannibals are at risk of related diseases, such as Kuru disease, similar to mad cow disease, a neurological prion disease caused by cannibalistic consumption. And when there are other food options, cannibalism will always be the most challenging. Studies show that cannibals tend to eat the young because it is the easiest, and they tend to hunt outside their own gene pool as a way of decreasing the competition. Cannibals are constantly at war with their own species, and animals have evolved various protections against this barbarism. Cannibalism is the ultimate expression of barbarism, the absence of civilization and culture, extreme cruelty. One could argue that the whole purpose of civilization is to increase the amount of food available to keep humanity from turning to cannibalism. Because who on earth wants barbarism over civility and compassion? The New York Times published a piece entitled "A Taste for Cannibalism," and they promoted it by tweeting, "Cannibalism has a time and a place. Some recent books, films, and shows suggest that the time is now." The article promotes a list of recent movies and shows about cannibalism, suggesting that perhaps we should all take the cue and give it a go, as if pop culture decides the destiny of mankind. And maybe it does. There is definitely a herd mentality that finds comfort in blind obedience and will do whatever they are told by the authoritative state emerging from the shadows. And the mainstream narrative is now normalizing cannibalism. So that's what is coming if we continue accepting their offers. It will be like the film Soylent Green, which was set in 2022, or like the film Cloud Atlas, wherein a dystopian government processes the dead into food to feed the wretched masses. Reporting for InfoWars, this is Greg Reese.
Is America's food supply being sabotaged? Or are we being judged by God and plagued with a future famine? As Michael Snyder details on his Economic Collapse blog, a worldwide drought mainly in the northern hemisphere is impacting agricultural production in the US and Europe. And this scarcity of various produce and meat is going to raise food prices in the months and years ahead. In Italy, farmers in some parts of the country have lost up to 80% of their harvest this year, due to the severe drought conditions in the region. In France, where the lack of rainfall has prompted widespread limits on fresh water use, they are experiencing their driest month in recorded history since March of 1961. This is especially impactful on the world's food supply since France is the fourth largest exporter of wheat. In Germany, the most important river, the Rhine, has dropped to dangerously low levels and even dried up completely in some places. Not only does this drop in water affect crop irrigation, but the river is used to transport the vast majority of all goods in and out of Germany, including coal, oil, and most importantly, food. In the Elbe River, hunger stones have reappeared which were used to mark low river levels that would forecast famines in the land. On one stone from 1616 it reads, "If you see me, cry." Here in the US, about half the nation is experiencing some level of drought, but the lack of precipitation is particularly bad in Texas, where the Dallas-Fort Worth area has had no measurable rain for 2 straight months. The lack of water has led many ranchers to panic sell their herds, being unable to water them, which will impact beef prices in the future. Is this just a typical weather cycle where a season of drought comes and goes? Or is this a true climate disaster, as the global warming alarmists would like us to think? And with food prices poised to explode, the question arises, what can we do about it? Will weather modification technology that has the ability to create rain by cloud seeding be brought to the mainstream public at last as a solution to this worldwide drought? China, the UAE, Indonesia, and other nations have already come out of the closet with their cloud seeding technology. So will the US government declassify their own weather manipulating tools to meet this crisis? Or perhaps this weather modification technology is what caused the drought across the world, by prematurely pulling water vapor out of the atmosphere and showering the land with chemtrail-tainted rain. How many decades have governments around the world used these cloud seeding agents? Chemical compounds made from aluminum, barium, potassium iodide, solid carbon dioxide, and various salt compounds. Aside from farmers and ranchers losing a large percentage of their products due to a lack of rainwater, food processing plants across the US have been mysteriously bursting into flames or shutting down, further fueling the food crisis caused by the drought. Starting in 2021, the uptick in disruptions at food processing facilities began, and today, the number stands well over 100 incidents that led to the shutdown of significant production. Starting in 2022, there was a shutdown at least once a week. These incidents destroyed, damaged, or impacted food processing facilities indefinitely, either by fires, diseases, or an assortment of accidents, like plane crashes. These incidents ceased beef and pork packing plants, milk parlors, egg farms, fertilizer plants, various produce packing and processing facilities, and an assortment of farms for turkeys, ducks, and chickens have been culled, millions of animals killed, for outbreaks of bird flu. Massive corporations like General Mills, Kellogg, Nestle, Walmart, Smithfield, JBS, and Purina have also shut down production. Have we been slated for starvation? Or are we being backed into a corner so we accept the terms of the New World Order's Great Reset agenda? Although we're armed with a powerful military and the Second Amendment to protect ourselves from an invasion or a tyrannical government, is food the weapon being used against us? Just like Henry Kissinger said, who controls the food supply controls the people.